Yo, what is up, guys? It's Freddie Knows Ball back with a brand new video. Today we've got cross-text connections, and I think you guys are going to love this one. I personally found a lot of improvement in this section. When I first came across this question type, I was honestly kind of lost, but once I got the hang of it, once I found these strategies, it became a lot more simple, and I feel a lot more confident on them when I'm taking them on the actual test and practice tests as well. So let's get right into it, guys. No intro. We don't need a super long intro or anything. There's no need for all that. Let's get right into it. In cross-text connections, the most important thing is to understand the passage. All right. In my opinion, the best way to go about it is get an idea of what the connotation of the passage is. See if it has a positive connotation or a negative connotation, whether it's supporting or refuting an argument or making a claim or a hypothesis, and see what the other text says, whether it is supporting or refuting text one, whether it is the one making the claim. Just try to get a feel for what the texts are trying to accomplish. For these questions, it is very important to boss or build your own solution. I've been through that in a couple different videos now. It is just such a powerful strategy that has to be mentioned in order for this to be a Freddie Knows Ball video.
Ball knowledge.
The ball knowledge for this question type is to focus on what the question is asking. A lot of people will skip the question or just get caught up in what the text is saying, and they'll forget what the question asks. Guys, each question doesn't ask the same thing, so you have to read what the question is asking for and make your guess or your boss based on that. So cross-text connection questions are easily identifiable because there's text one and there's text two, and then there's the question that asks the relationship between them or whatever, right? So if you see a text one and a text two, then you know it's a cross-text connections question. And so for these types of questions, pretty much the order is: one, read the question; two, read the text with the question in mind; three, make your boss or your own solution, your own guess; and four, see which answer choice most closely aligns with that solution. With that said, let's get right into the questions. So the question is asking, based on the texts, how would the author of text 2 most likely characterize the theory described in text 1? So how would text 2 respond to text 1? Because literacy in Nahuatl script, the writing system of the Aztec Empire, was lost after Spain invaded central Mexico in the 1500s, it is unclear exactly how meaning was encoded in the script's symbols. Although many scholars had assumed that the symbols signified entire words, linguists theorized in '08 that they signified units of language smaller than words, individual syllables. Text 2 says, the growing consensus among scholars of Nahuatl script is that many of its symbols could signify either words or syllables depending on syntax and content at any given site within a text. For example, the symbol signifying the word blouse in some contexts could signify the syllable pill in others, as in the place name Chipiltepec. Thus, for the Aztecs, reading required a determination of how such symbols functioned each time they appeared in a text. So, how would text 2 most likely characterize text 1? I would personally say that text 2 would say, yes, they do signify individual syllables, but they also could signify words. So that's my boss. I'm saying they're not going to agree with them, but they're also not disagreeing. They're adding on to text 1's theory by praising the theory for recognizing that the script symbols could represent entire words. That's not. Text 1 is actually theorizing that it's not entire words, so that's already wrong, and also text 2 doesn't support that. It doesn't praise the theory. By arguing that the theory is overly influenced by the work of earlier scholars. That's just not supported by the text. We don't even really talk about the earlier scholars. We talk about the same Nahuatl script in both texts, and that really just doesn't align with my guess at all. By approving of the theory's emphasis on how the script changed over time. So we're not talking about the time aspect here. We're really just talking about what do the units of language signify. That's the main thing that I see coming out of this passage. D says, by cautioning that the theory overlooks certain important aspects of how the script functioned. Yes. Because, look, guys, overlooking the important information. It has some of it, but it's overlooking the fact that it can also be words. Text 2 says words or syllables. Text 1 says just syllables. Text 1 is overlooking the words part. And so that's why D makes perfect sense here. Here's the next question. Based on the texts, how would the author of text 2 most likely respond to text 1? So similar to the last one. Digital art, the use of digital technology to create or display images, isn't really art at all. It doesn't require as much skill as creating physical art. Painting with a tablet and stylus is much easier than using paint and a brush. The technology is doing most of the work. Text 2. The painting programs used to create digital art involve more than just pressing a few buttons. In addition to knowing the fundamentals of art, digital artists need to be familiar with sophisticated software. Many artists will start by drawing an image on paper before transforming the piece to a digital format where they can apply a variety of colors and techniques that would otherwise require many different traditional tools. So text 1 is essentially saying digital technology is not art. It's basically cheating. Text 2 is saying digital art low-key is kind of art though. Like, yeah, maybe it's a different type, but you still got to know a lot of things. You got to know different softwares. You got to know how to do things. So text 2 is basically like disagreeing with text 1 essentially by arguing that a piece of art created digitally can still be displayed traditionally. We're not really talking about how it can be displayed. We're talking about, is digital technology to use art really art, right? By explaining that it's actually much harder to use a tablet and stylus to create art than to use a paint and brush. This answer choice looks appealing. However, text 2 is not actually saying that it's harder. It's just saying that it's different but it is still art, right? By insisting that digital art requires artistic abilities and skill even if it employs less traditional tools. Exactly, right? Digital art does employ less traditional tools. There's no way to get around that. Text 2 is really trying to say, though, digital art does take skill, and you do kind of have to be good at art in order for it to work. By admitting that most digital artists don't think fundamental drawing skills are important, we don't really care what most digital artists think. We're looking at what text 2 is saying about text 1. So that just doesn't align with my guess at all. So C is our correct answer here. Based on the text, how would the author of text 2 most likely characterize the underlined claim in text 1? Like the work of Ralph Ellison before her, Toni's novels feature scenes in which characters deliver sermons of such length and verbal dexterity that for a time, the text exchanges the formal parameters of fiction for those of oral literature. Given the many other echoes of Ellison in Morrison's novels, both in structure and prose style, these scenes suggest Ellison's direct influence on Morrison. Text 2. In their destabilizing effect on literary form, the sermons in Morrison's works recall those in Ellison's. Yet literature by Black Americans abounds in moments where interpolated speech erodes the division between oral and written forms that literature in English has traditionally observed. Morrison's use of the sermon is attributable not only to the influence of Ellison, but also to a community-wide strategy of resistance to externally imposed literary conventions. Text 1 is saying that Ellison directly influenced Morrison. Text 2 is saying that it's not only influenced by Ellison, but also the community around and externally imposed literary conventions. So similar to the first question we did, it's more of an overlooked type of thing. You're overlooking that there's actually more than just Ellison influencing here, as failing to consider Ellison's and Morrison's equivalent uses of the sermon within the wider cultural context in which they wrote. Yes, all right, this is a tricky one to understand, so let's actually dissect this. So essentially what A is saying is that they failed to see that Morrison was influenced by the wider cultural context. And that's pretty much what we're saying. Failed to see and overlooked, that's similar, right? So text 1 is failing to see the community-wide strategy of resistance to externally imposed literary conventions. And that's what A is saying, just in a more wordy way, in my opinion. As misunderstanding the function of sermons in novels by Black American writers other than Ellison and Morrison. We're not really talking about the function of sermons. We're talking about who influences who, right? We're talking about the influence. As disregarding points of structural and stylistic divergence between the works of Ellison and those of Morrison. All right, so disregarding points does sound right because that is, text 1 was disregarding the other influence, right? but structural and stylistic divergence is where this question is wrong, as being indebted to the tradition of resisting literary conventions that privilege written forms such as novels over sermons and other oral forms. This is honestly kind of wordy. If I try to break it down, it's basically saying that the claim that text 1 is making comes from the same tradition of the written forms and things of the such. So that's honestly like kind of going off the tracks a little bit. So A is the best answer in this question. And as you guys can see, it didn't perfectly align with my guess. And you guys will see that as a common theme. I've mentioned this before. With hard questions, your guess might not align super closely with any of the answer choices. But there will be one that once you look at the evidence and you understand what each answer choice is saying as well, you will be able to more accurately find the correct answer. How would text 2 most likely respond to text 1? All right, so this one's pretty much the same thing. Virginia Woolf's novel Orlando is an oddity within her body of work. Her other major novels consist mainly of scenes of everyday life and describe their characters' interior states in great detail, whereas Orlando propels itself through a series of fantastical events and considers its characters' psychology more superficially. Woolf herself sometimes regarded the novel as a minor work, even admitting once that she began it as a joke. Like Woolf's other great novels, Orlando portrays how people's memories inform their experience of the present. Like those works, it examines how people navigate social interactions shaped by gender and social class. Though it is lighter in tone, more entertaining even, this literary joke nonetheless engages seriously with the themes that motivated the 4 or 5 other novels by Woolf that have achieved the status of literary classics. So text 1 is essentially talking about Orlando and how it is an oddity, meaning it stands out, and how Woolf literally began it as a joke. So she wasn't even taking it super seriously, but it ended up becoming a major novel. Text 2 is saying that Orlando is lighter in tone and it has similarities with the other major novels. So text 1 is kind of highlighting a difference between Orlando and the major novels. Text 2 is more so highlighting the similarities and sort of categorizing Orlando as a major novel. By conceding that Woolf's talents were best suited to serious novels, but asserting that the humor in Orlando is often effective. So text 2 does say that the humor in Orlando is entertaining and it is good. It doesn't say that the talents were best suited to serious novels though. So that's where A is wrong. By agreeing that Orlando is less impressive, okay, I'm going to stop right there. That's not true at all. You just can't infer that from the text. It's less impressive than certain other novels, but arguing that it should still be regarded as a classic. Yeah, no, that's just not supported at all. By acknowledging that Orlando clearly differs from Woolf's other major novels, but insisting on its centrality to her body of work nonetheless. Yeah, exactly. Text 2 wouldn't say that it's an oddity like text 1 would. It isn't unique and there are similar works to it, is what it's saying. So that's different than text 1, which is saying that Orlando is an oddity. By concurring that the reputation of Orlando as a minor work has led readers to overlook this novel, but maintaining that the reputation is unearned. We're not concurring that it's a minor work. We're categorizing it with novels that are literary classics or major novels. So C is the best answer in this question. And that's all I've got for you guys today. I hope this helped you guys out. As we get into these more reading type questions, I do want to emphasize that it's all about practice, guys. You can know every strategy in the world. You can know every shortcut. But if you don't put them into effect, practice them on your own, and put in your own hours, you're probably not going to see the results that you want. And so there's only so much I can do to help you get there. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. I try to get to every single comment. But besides that, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.